They are cynically doing it, okay? But make no mistake, you shouldn't immediately push these people away unless it's something like what Thom Yorke is saying, because he still is trying to both sides of the situation. Bullshit. I'm still getting punished for speaking out as an American Jew in the entertainment industry. No, I know. There's still people who are in the crosshairs, myself included. Anyway, moving on from that, Israel has finally lost Radiohead's very own Thom Yorke. Now, of course, Thom Yorke still had a incredibly middle-of-the-road take on it, but it's an indication that the tide shift is here. As you guys know, Radiohead has been getting railed for being Zionist, for performing in Israel, and also for not really saying anything about Palestinians. Thom Yorke is the front man for Radiohead, and he finally came out with a statement. Let's read. Some guy shouting at me from the dark last year when I was picking up a guitar to sing the final song alone in front of 9,000 people in Melbourne didn't really seem like the best moment to discuss the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Afterwards, I remained in shock that my supposed silence was somehow being taken as complicity, and I struggled to find an adequate way to respond to this and to carry on with the rest of the shows on the tour. That silence, my attempt to show respect for all those who are suffering and those who have died, and not to trivialize in a few words, has allowed other opportunistic groups to use intimidation and defamation to fill in the blanks, and I regret giving them this chance. This has taken a heavy toll on my mental health. You know who the real victim of Israel's genocide is? Thom Yorke of Radiohead. That's right. He's a creep. He's a weirdo. He's a Zionist. What the hell is he doing here? He does not belong here. Okay? The real toll here was Thom Yorke's mental health, not the almost 20,000 children that Israel in broad daylight in a live stream, but actually Thom Yorke, Thomas Yorke of Radiohead. Anyway, I would hope that for anyone who has ever listened to a note of my music, of my band, or any of the music I've created over the years, or looked at the artwork or read any of the lyrics, it would be self-evident that I could not possibly support any form of extremism or dehumanization of others. All I see in a lifetime's worth of work with my fellow musicians and artists is pushing against such things, trying to create. First of all, it's just the both sides. Our focus of this is still how much he was vilified in this process. Okay, so remember that. Not only is this an awful self-aggrandizing victimization narrative that he is hitting here, okay, but it's also still both sidesing the matter. This, you will see a lot of these, okay? It's incredibly self-indulgent. Yes. You will see a lot of this. You will see a lot of this in the upcoming weeks and months, where many artists who are unconditionally and firmly committed to Israel having to basically crawl through a mile of rusty nails to finally come out and be like, oh, God, I just don't want to do this, but also Israel, oh, come on, you've killed too many children. Okay? You'll see it. You'll see it. I actually posted in my Discord yesterday about this, ironically enough, before I even saw Thom Yorke's tweet or statement, where I said something along the lines of like, you will see a lot of like YouTubers who come out and make bold declarative statements about Israel being violent or whatever, now that they do not fear severe social and political and career repercussions for it. But in the process of other people coming out and saying like, yeah, I was always an anti-Zionist, or yeah, I always was saying F Israel, or just saying it quietly. In that process, if they turn around and offer any criticism whatsoever to all of the people who have been actively calling this out for 19 months, if they do that, I'm not letting them get away with that shit. Okay? I'm not Mr. Gatekeep the that Israel is doing. I've said this already. There's going to be a lot of people that you will see coming forward. Going forward, you will see a lot of people coming out and saying, I've always been against this, guys. Please. Okay? I've always been against this. But I don't mind it. I don't necessarily mind that people are coming out now that it's like safer. It's good. It means that more people are recognizing this. It means that there is no environment of censorship that can cause severe penalties to your future ambitions or whatever, that means that there is so broad momentum. Okay? You guys played a role in that. When you went out and you protested every week, you made it so that there was a permission structure. Okay? So now that it's happening, now that the tide is shifting, don't immediately push people away when they come to this conclusion. Don't immediately assume that they're being cynical, even though many of the people that are now coming out, only now coming out, are being cynical. They are cynically doing it, okay? But make no mistake, you shouldn't immediately push these people away unless it's something like what Thom Yorke is saying, because he still is trying to both sides of the situation. Bullshit, I'm still getting punished for speaking out as an American Jew in the entertainment industry. No, I know. There's still people who are in the crosshairs, myself included, okay? People who have been doing this for quite a while, that the Israeli government has actively put the beat on, actively put crosshairs on. It is what it is, okay? Anyway, let's continue. All I see in a lifetime worth of work with my fellow musicians and artists is pushing against such things, trying to create work that goes beyond what it means to be controlled, coerced, threatened, instead to encourage critical thinking beyond borders, the commonality of love and experience, and free creative expression. Sounds naff, but true. For others, let me fill in the blanks now so we're nice and clear. I think Netanyahu and his crew of extremists are totally out of control and need to be stopped, and that the international community should put all the pressure it can on them to cease. Their excuse of self-defense has long since worn thin and has been replaced by a transparent desire to take control of Gaza and the West Bank permanently. This is an interesting thing to state right now after 19 months of, live stream, especially considering that a day after October 7, they said they were fighting human animals, and that Israel had the right, nay, the responsibility to shut off food and water and electricity into the Gaza Strip to punish all of the entirety of the Palestinian population. They've never shied away from their exterminationist rhetoric. As a matter of fact, the only reason why people are now openly recognizing it is because it has become impossible to deny. Impossible to deny. I believe this ultra-nationalist administration has hidden itself behind a terrified and grieving people and used them to deflect any criticism, using that fear and grief to further their ultra-nationalist agenda with terrible consequences, as we see now the horrific blockade of aid to Gaza. While our lives tick along as normal, these endless thousands of innocent human souls are still being expelled from Earth for what? At the same time, the unquestioning Free Palestine refrain that surrounds us does not answer the simple question of why the hostages have still not been returned. For what possible reason? I don't know, man. Maybe because they're genociding everyone in the Gaza Strip, which includes the Israeli hostages. Perhaps that's part of it, don't you think? This is what I mean. There is no quarters for this kind of bullshit, especially this far out, okay? If you're going to come out and you're going to swing for the fences and try to basically reduce the impact of months and months of your silence and your refusal to recognize the humanity of Palestinians, you can't turn around and be like, why does Hamas still have the hostages? I don't know. Read an article, man. Read one singular article. You could read Haaretz if you want. They have basically laid it out for the past 19 months. Okay? They basically laid it out for the past 19 months. Only a couple days after October 7, Hamas came out and literally told the Israeli negotiators that they would release all the hostages as long as Israel did not enter the Gaza Strip. Israel said, off. Of course we're entering the Gaza Strip. 19 months of Israeli leadership saying over and over again, we don't give a fuck about the hostages. We don't care about the hostages. We don't want to do a ceasefire. We want to keep doing our... And you still have this like insane statement 19 months in where you're supposed to be like, oh, you guys finally bullied me into saying something. Are you happy now? Only to turn around and be like, why does Hamas still have the hostages? I don't know. At this point, maybe you should investigate that yourself. Why did Hamas choose the truly horrific acts of October 7th? The answer seems obvious, and I believe Hamas chooses to hide behind the suffering of its people in an equally cynical fashion of their own purposes. Ridiculous. I also think there is further an extremely important point to make. Like, if you ask this question, follow it up. Follow it up with like a little bit of reading. Hamas does not exist if Israel's occupation doesn't exist. It's that simple, okay? Palestinian emancipation has taken multiple forms throughout the 77-year occupation. Hamas is like the last formation of it, and its militancy and its targets have changed even throughout the limited timeline that Hamas has even existed. At first, as a Muslim Brotherhood cutout charity, Islamic charity organization, then an active fucking party, and simultaneously a form of militancy that initially only targeted and struck non-civilian enemy combatants, that then also, in the aftermath of the Cave of the Patriarchs massacre, turning around and actually targeting civilian targets as well. There is obviously no excuse for killing civilians, okay? But you have to recognize where this desperation comes from. If you act as though these groups just basically formed out of their hatred for Jews, especially when you're talking about the situation for Palestinians, violent occupation of Israel for 77 years of ethnic cleansing, expulsions, death and destruction, humiliation, complete control over their lives, you are not actually fucking covering the situation. You're not even remotely curious as to how this happened. Hamas kills its own people. They're opportunistic and siphon off the wealth from the locals. They should get removed. While isn't real, isn't good. They're just as bad. To say that Israel and Hamas are equally on equal footing is the most idiotic, childlike thing I've ever heard in my entire life, okay? I understand that your liberal brain wants to say, no, those guys are bad too, okay? They are not on the same planet. They are not on the same fucking zip code. You are basically saying Jewish partisans that fought against the Nazi occupation in the lead up to the fucking final solution had bad ideas and engaged in acts of resistance against civilian populations as well, and therefore they're just as bad as the Nazi occupiers. That is an insane fucking analogy to make, and the reason why you would never make that is because you have the capacity to recognize right from wrong when it comes to systematic violence and the resistance born out of that systematic violence when it's in the fucking rearview mirror. Hindsight is 2020. Look in front of the events that are unfolding after 90 fucking months, and maybe you can understand why the fuck they are not even on the same zip code on the same fucking planet, okay? Jesus Christ. How can people still say this shit at this point? At least have the decency to pipe down, okay? At least have the decency to keep quiet and listen to someone whose positions you have arrived at far too late. This is what's frustrating to someone like myself, okay? Also, Twitter is busted right now, unsurprisingly. But it is crazy. It is crazy to literally be a latecomer to this and only now recognize that both are bad. They are born out of that situation, but they stamp down on their own people. Born out of what situation? Who caused the situation? Don't use vague generalities, okay? Tell me, who caused the situation? Who caused the Nakba? What the hell? There is a reason why no one would say the Nat Turner Rebellion ultimately was incredibly violent, but it's nothing in comparison to 400 years of chattel slavery as a practice, okay? Just like you can't say, well, the apartheid in South Africa was bad, but also a lot of the violent practices of the ANC and MK was really unconscionable. You can't say those things. The reason why you don't say those things is because you understand you have a much better way of analyzing things that took place, okay? No idea just looking at this from an average Joe position. Yeah, my job as a communicator, as a political commentator, is to explain to the average Joe that there is a severe asymmetry of power here, okay? A severe asymmetry of power. No, you don't have to be a perfect victim. Do you understand? That's ridiculous. And if you can comprehend that for any other time throughout history, even though there has been a liberal brain poisoning and a whitewashing of history. That's why people look to Nelson Mandela as a peaceful figure, okay? They rewrite history in an effort for you to feel this exact way when you see regular emancipatory movements, non-state actors fighting justifiably against a fucking state oppressor. A settler colonial enterprise designed around the notion of ethno-religious supremacy, an exterminationist principle. That's what Zionism is. It is a fascist ideology. It's a racist ideology. It is no different than Nazism. Even the average Joe podcasters are 5,000 times more informed than this chatter. It's embarrassing to be... Yeah, exactly. You got fucking Theo Von. You got people like Theo Von at least going, dude, of course people are going to fucking fight back. What are you supposed to do when met with the ultimate violence of Israel Okay, when they have the capacity to recognize right from wrong, but a lot of people still maintain this position where it's like, oh, average Joes don't really understand it. Libs think Jewish partisans were good just because they were Jewish and not because they were fighting fascists. The phrase never again was made by Kahan specifically as an expression of ethnic chauvinism. No, never again's application was not supposed to be Kahanist. Never again's application was never supposed to be Kahanist. And many people don't even think of it from that Kahanist framework until post-October 7, where so many... No, that chatter is not wrong. That chatter is not wrong. That chatter is not wrong. That chatter is actually fucking correct. Okay? Most people do not hear never again and think, oh, this means never again just for Jews. That is the Kahanist interpretation of this statement. Okay? Yes. I wouldn't say Kahan made the phrase. I think he popularized it within a certain sect. Okay, but never again was not was never seen as that Kahanist interpretation. Okay, please don't say that. If you ask the average person what never again implies, no one would ever think of the Kahanist interpretation. Never again, just for Jews. Because that is what it is. For those of you who don't know, Mayor Kahan is a ultra right-wing, super racist, basically the Grand Wizard of the KKK, but for Jews, okay? A Jewish supremacist, ultra right-wing terrorist. That's who Mayor Kahan is. And this is not an exaggeration. I mean, he was branded a fucking terrorist by the Israeli government, okay? His follower, Baruch Goldstein, famously went into the fucking mosque in Jerusalem and shot and killed, did a heinous act of terror in occupied West Bank. He is a sociopath. He was a sociopath. Or not in Jerusalem, sorry, Hebron. I apologize. Okay? Like, he is such a terrorist. Mayor Kahan was such a fucking terrorist that the terrorist state of Israel considered him to be a terrorist. A Brooklyn native, of course. Just like Baruch Goldstein was also one of our own. Anyway, yeah, 29 dead, 125 wounded, including children. A counter-protester I met had a long-live Baruch Goldstein poster. Yeah, it's fucking freaks. A lot of people are able to basically mask their insanely extremist, insanely racist ideology, especially when it comes to Jewish supremacist thought, because most people don't know about these movements. Most people have not done any reading on even the history of Israel or the history of Palestine. And on top of that, most people only know about Judaism and Jews from the perspective of marginalization, post-Holocaust, and also how anti-Semitism manifests due to the way that they've learned about Jewish history. Okay? So for a lot of people, they get scared when someone even says, like, there is a Jewish supremacist slant, a Jewish fascist supremacist slant amongst some of these movements. And the irony, of course, is that the Jewish Power Party is now a viable party within the Israeli Knesset, within the Israeli parliament, okay? Jews in Israel are not a marginalized population. Jews in Israel are the oppressor population. It's like saying fuck white people in America, okay? This is something that a lot of people cannot comprehend. They don't understand it because their entire lives they've been taught like Jews have been pogromed, historically been undermined, historically been attacked, and that's precisely what's going on right now. Like, that is the framework that they operate off of. Over there, that is not the case, okay? And the greatest example I can always give you is this. In the Western world, where when someone spray paints the Star of David outside of a Jewish person's house, that means that person is probably going to get hate crimed, okay? In Israel and in the West Bank, and occupied illegally by the Israeli state, when they spray paint a Star of David outside of your house, that means Jewish settlers are going to come in and blow up your fucking house. And this happens on a regular frequency, on a regular basis, okay? Jewish settlers go to people's houses, blow them up, and get full protection from the Israeli occupying force in the process. If you try to even fight back, or if you're in the crosshairs, you get killed, either by the settlers themselves, who have been armed by the American state, okay, by way of Itamar Ben-Gvir from the Jewish Power Party, okay, which is literally the Klan, Okay. Like imagine the Klan, but instead of white supremacists, they are Jewish supremacists. Okay. They either get killed by those guys or they get killed by the Israeli occupying force. And there's only so much back and forth we can have here. There's only so much back and forth we can have here where it's like a big part of the reason why you're confused is because of your lack of knowledge on this stuff, your lack of interest in finding out about the history of Israel. And I think a lot of people, instead of turning around, taking a deep breath and being like, let me listen to what this person is saying sincerely and try to understand this different perspective that I had never encountered, a perspective rooted within truth, by the way, historical truth, rather than the whitewashed, bastardized lies that you have learned, okay? Instead of doing that 19 months into a genocide, you still go, I'm going to react with anger. I'm going to react with resentment because you're telling me something that does not correspond to my previous social conditioning. And it's very frustrating. It's your lack of knowledge in this process that's causing you to fucking lash back out in this way. Anyway, having said that, and I this is my criticism for Thom Yorke as well. When he says, why hasn't Hamas truly chose the truly attacks of October 7? The answer is Hamas chose the truly horrific attacks of October 7, the truly horrific act of October 7, as a direct consequence of, at that time, 75 years of Israeli occupation. And this isn't just my assessment of the situation. Even liberal Zionist publications like Haaretz had the exact same approach, had the exact same take, because that is the truth. That is the truth. You cannot keep killing people at a rapid clip and dominate every facet of their existence and expect and then show them that there is no negotiation, that negotiations in the so-called peace process have only led to more land grabs from the Israeli state in the West Bank, and then expect them not to do anything when you back them into a fucking corner. That's it. Not agreeing with the tactics of Hamas or openly stating that there were atrocities that unfolded on October 7 does not change that dynamic, does not change the much larger atrocity of 75 years at that time of apartheid and military occupation and death and destruction. I also think there is further an extremely important point to make. Social media witch hunts, nothing new on either side, pressurizing artists and whoever they feel like that week to make statements, etc., do very little except heighten the tension. Like he's this fucking asshole. How old is Thom Yorke, dude? Let me see. 56 years old, brother. 56 years old. You're a whole ass, almost 60-year-old adult. And you're over here talking about how the real problem here is social media. That is disgusting. I'm sorry that as a major artist who literally played in Israel, people were looking to you to say something. Okay? I don't care. I listened to a lot of Radiohead when I was growing up. I don't personally give a shit whatever Thom Yorke says, okay? I don't care if Thom Yorke would come out and release a statement, but there are obviously plenty of people who look up to people like Thom Yorke. And in that moment, shouldn't your conscience guide you? Shouldn't you look at what is happening, what is taking place, the genocide that is unfolding, and say, my conscience is the reason why I'm making this statement, and not talk about social media pressure? You're fucking 60 years old. You're a multimillionaire. Jesus fucking Christ. Get over yourself. This kind of deliberate polarization does not serve our fellow humans and perpetuates a constant us and them mentality. It destroys hope and maintains a sense of isolation, the very things that extremists use to maintain their position. We facilitate their hiding in plain sight if we assume that the extremists and the people they claim to represent are one and the same, indivisible. If our world is ever able to move on from these dark times and find peace, it will only be when we rediscover what we share in common. And the extremists are sent back to sit in the dark. Oh my God, what a fucking fence sitter. I sympathize completely with the desire to do something on our devices every day. It completely makes sense. But now I think it's a dangerous illusion to believe reposting or one or two line messages are meaningful, especially if it's to condemn your fellow human beings. They are unintended consequences. It is shouting from the darkness. It's not looking people in the eye when you speak. It's making dangerous assumptions. It's not a debate, and it is not critical thinking. Importantly, it is open to online manipulation of all kinds, both mechanistic and political. What is the alternative? I can't answer that easily. I do know in communities around the globe, this subject is now dangerously toxic and we are in uncharted waters. Dude, no one is holding your hand through this, okay? Like, it's not that hard. The only reason why it would be hard to make a fucking statement like this is only because you love Israel. That's it. And you still can't let it go. And there are plenty of people who do have this framework, by the way. Plenty of fucking people who are stupid ass boomers who just cannot let this concept go, that Israel is still like a good country, a moral nation, okay? There is a reason why when Radiohead played in Israel or when artists play in Israel, that is a controversial thing for many people way before October 7. Do you know why it is controversial? Because it's been an apartheid. It was an apartheid before October 7. October 7 happened because of the Israeli apartheid. That's it. There has never been a moment where Israel was a moral nation. I mean, there is no such thing as a moral nation anyway. Jesus Christ. I mean, states do an unimaginable amount of violence, but there are some kinds of violence, especially in the grand design post-World War II, where the type of repressive forces that come with the regular maintenance of an apartheid is seen a bridge too fucking far by the average person. That's it. Israel being a settler colonial occupation that maintains the notion of Jewish supremacist thought and runs on an exterminationist policy of all of the indigenous population of the land, the Palestinians, the non-Jewish population of the land. This is a fascist ideology, and it is no different than apartheid South Africa. If it's worse, if not worse. I mean, it is worse. And it's not my assessment that is worse. It's Archbishop Desmond Tutu's assessment that Israel is a worse version of apartheid than even South Africa. It's over. It's over. It's done. The violence is still unfolding. The famine is still unfolding. But Israel's days in terms of being like a normal country is done. It's over. Okay? Israel will never be able to recover from the reputational damage that it brought about itself because of the arrogance that it displayed on the global stage as it engaged in its ethnic cleansing campaign of Palestinians, an arrogance that was born not simply out of Jewish supremacist thought or whatever, even though that plays a role on it, okay? But an arrogance that was born out of having 75 years of unlimited propaganda coming from the West. That is the reason why many people ask, myself included, how the fuck are they lying in the worst ways possible? Like, they're not even trying to massage the narrative at all. The reason why they don't even have to massage the narrative at all, or think that they don't have to massage the narrative at all, is because they've never done that. Okay? They've never done this in the past. They've never had to. They could just say whatever they wanted to, and whatever they said went. What is the alternative? I can't answer that easily. I'm sure that at this point, what I've written here will in no way satisfy those who chose to target myself or those I work with. They will spend time picking holes and looking for reasons to continue. Yeah, you did a horrible job writing this. I have written this in the simple hope that I can join with the many millions of others praying for the suffering, isolation, and death to stop, praying that we can collectively regain our humanity, dignity, and our ability to reach understanding, that one day soon this darkness will have passed. Once this cleansing is closed, Israel will actively move in the direction of whitewashing and trying to launder its reputation. Okay? It is up to all of us to make sure that we do the right thing and don't forget the hundreds of thousands of Palestinian victims in the process. That's it. Israel will inevitably hit the liberal Zionist slant to say, this is entirely in the hands of Benjamin Netanyahu. I can't believe he did this. Oh my God, it's a couple right-wing ultra-nationalists that really changed the dynamic of this country. I mean, this is not who we are. This is not what we represent. It is what Israel represents. Here is Avi Shleim, Iraqi Jewish Israeli historian Avi Shleim of the New Historians, writing for the Middle East Eye, saying, why I support the UK taking a more nuanced position on Hamas. The government wants to distinguish between the group's military and political wings, a policy that ended with a total proscription in 2021. The reputation of Hamas sank to its lowest point after its attacks on October 7th, in which 1,200 Israelis and foreigners were killed and 251 taken hostage. In Israel, this attack provoked a tsunami of anger, strident calls for revenge, demands for ethnic cleansing of Gaza, and a national consensus in support of the total eradication of Hamas. The results have been the longest, deadliest, and most ruinous war in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Hamas is a social movement and a political organization with a military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades. The military wing was prescribed by the British government as a terrorist organization in March 2001, and in November 2021, former Home Secretary Priti Patel added the political organization to his list of proscribed groups. This decision marked an abrupt reversal of the government's previous policy, which made a clear distinction between Hamas's political and military wings. Patel, a staunch supporter of Israel, argued unconvincingly, in my opinion, that the distinction between the two wings was no longer tenable. For its part, Israel has always denied that there is any difference between the two wings. In August 2017, as Secretary of State for International Development, Patel went on a trip to Israel, accompanied by Lord Polak, honorary president of the Conservative Friends of Israel, and a major fundraiser for the Tory party. You might recognize the Conservative Friends of Israel, I believe, or no, it was the Labor Friends of Israel. One of them was outed as a pedophile recently. She had previously served as an officer of CFI's parliamentary group between 2011 and 2014. While pretending to be on private holiday, Patel held 12 secret meetings with high-ranking Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Upon her return, she asked her officials to explore the possibility of diverting some of the foreign aid budget to enable the Israeli army to carry out humanitarian work in the occupied Golan Heights. She was subsequently forced to resign for concealing the nature and purpose of her trip to Israel. In 2019, then Prime Minister Boris Johnson rehabilitated Patel by appointing her as Home Secretary. Johnson shared her Manichaean view of the Middle East struggle, in which Israel represents the forces of light and Palestinians the forces of darkness. The change of policy towards Hamas was announced not by the Foreign Secretary, but by the Home Secretary. Patel said that designating the whole of Hamas as a terrorist organization should be seen through a domestic prism. It would help to protect Jews in this country. This argument is baseless. Hamas does not carry out operations outside of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, and it has no presence in Britain, and it poses no threat to British Jews in this country. Hamas's 2017 document of general principles and policies, unlike the 1988 Hamas Charter, explicitly distinguishes between Judaism as a religion and Zionism as a political project. You will never hear that, though, from people. Okay, they love talking about the 1988 Charter. It affirms that Hamas's conflict with Israel is due to the occupation, not religion, and states that it would accept the creation of a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders without recognizing Israel. Hamas has now instructed Riverway, a London law firm, to make an application to the Home Secretary to remove the government's designation of the movement as a prescribed terror group and recognize its legitimate role as Palestinian resistance movement engaged in the struggle for self-determination and liberation. The application is made by Mossa Abu Marzouk, the former head of Hamas's political bureau. I am among 19 experts supporting this legal filing through reports on the history and context of Palestinian dispossession. My report describes the central role played by Britain in facilitating this dispossession from the Balfour Declaration of 1917 up until the present. Western media outlets have relied heavily on the Israeli narrative of the 7th of October, including its countless false allegations and outright fabrications, such as the story of 40 decapitated babies, while underreporting the Palestinian side of the story. One of Abu Marzouk's most significant correctives of the dominant narrative concerns the background to the Hamas-led October 7th attack. According to him, Hamas sought to achieve specific military objectives during the operation with clear instructions not to target women, children, and the elderly. Since deviations from these instructions admittedly occurred, Hamas is prepared to cooperate with the International Criminal Court and any other neutral third party in an independent and transparent investigation into the events of that day. If you recall, this is something that I stated after October 7th. I said this on October 8th, that war crimes that took place on October 7th, and there were many, okay, and a lot of them were fucking filmed, should also be prosecuted within the framework of a 75-year occupation that Israel was committed to. This has always happened in truth and reconciliation committees that have been put together in the aftermath of, atrocious forms of systematic violence. This position stands in sharp contrast to Israel's denials of journalists' entry into Gaza and its refusal to allow any independent investigation of the atrocities and war crimes committed by its forces. To explain Hamas's behavior is not to justify it. Killing civilians is wrong, period. But here, as always, the context is all important. The attack of 7th of October did not occur in a vacuum. It occurred against the backdrop of decades of brutal and suffocating military occupation. Moreover, as a people living under unlawful military occupation, Palestinians have a right to resist, including the right to armed resistance. Again, correct. In effect, labeling Hamas's political leaders as terrorists, pure and simple, gives Israel a free pass to inflict death and destruction on Gaza without being held to account. And nuanced understanding of the history, motives, and policies and principles of Hamas. The terrorist framing stands in the way of a more balanced and nuanced understanding of the history, motives, policies, and principles of Hamas. For the record, the terrorism designation is so that there is no nuanced perspective and understanding of not just Hamas, but all Palestinian people. The designation is designed to stop any kind of commentary, any kind of questioning of official narratives coming from the Israeli side, because they are exterminating Hamas, and you can always get away with doing whatever the fuck you want to do. Okay? To make it illegal to even present such things. In the past, in the United States of America, the American government has quite literally designed the new designations to prosecute even lawyers that offer legal counsel to terror groups as material support. The majority of Western supporters of Israel genuinely believe this is anti-Semitic, though. I don't care. It's because criticizing Israel is considered anti-Semitism. Remembering the deaths of Palestinian children will be and is considered anti-Semitism, though. I know. But it is on us and people like myself as communicators to showcase how depraved that mindset is. Also, we are at a interesting impasse where anti-Semitism allegations are nowhere near as powerful as it once were due to the steady effort of pro-Israel groups that have very actively targeted people who aren't anti-Semitic, but simply anti-Israel. Okay? That's why Zippy Hotoveli screams blood libel all the time. People believe it. No, you are having this is a genuine misunderstanding. There's people and then there's politicians. Politicians are trying to maintain the old narratives. People don't believe it anymore. And because there's an overwhelming amount of people that go, okay, dude, you say everyone is anti-Semitic whenever they say, I don't want babies to be murdered. When that is the majority opinion, and that absolutely is the majority opinion now, okay, it doesn't matter. There is too much pressure for media to continue behaving in the ways that they have, and there's too much pressure on politicians to continue maintaining the positions that they have in the past. It's that simple. And for the record, I will take it one step further and I will tell you, okay, that there is a dangerous side to the story as well. The dangerous side of the story is that people genuinely do not give a fuck about anti-Semitism, okay? Why do the majority of British Jews think that Corbyn was Hitler then? Dog, you're talking about a very different time. What do you mean? You're talking about a very different time. I know. I'm talking post-October 7, where there is a direct reversal of Israel and its position in Western society. It has become a fucking pariah state. And you're talking about people who were correct and on the right side of history before this pariah state opinion was mainstreamed. Anyway, I think people are anti-Israel. I also think a lot of people are anti-Semitic. Yes, that was the other thing I was going to say. Part of the reason why people don't give a fuck about anti-Semitism allegations is because Israel defenders have weaponized that against Israel to defend Israel over and over again. The other part of the reason why, and that's why I said it's like kind of scary as well, is because people legitimately don't give a fuck about anti-Semitism, like across the board. Not even as its cynical application of like defending Israel. People just do not give a fuck about anti-Semitism. They are anti-Semitic. Okay? A lot of people are unironically fucking anti-Semitic. Straight up. That's it. And the reason why it got to this point is because of that awful conflation and because of years and years of being able to design a social structure, years and years of being able to design a social structure where critics of Israel were silenced and suppressed, even if they weren't anti-Semitic. No one ever used a scalpel to address carefully who was being anti-Semitic and who was not. And once they hit that button over and over again and exhausted it, and the overwhelming majority of people's position shifted to going fuck Israel, all of those conflations between Israel and Jews became a negative association for Jews. This is what I've been saying for years. I've been saying this before October 7, and I've kept repeating this over and over again post-October 7. If you don't distinguish between Jews in diaspora, Jews that live in the Western world, and Israel, at a certain point, people are going to learn that. People are going to learn that lesson. It is identical. It is identical to like a British Salafist running around and saying that ISIS actually represents true Islam, and that if you actually criticize ISIS's actions, you are Islamophobic. Okay? Imagine every serious institution in the media doing that comparison, but in a way where they think they're defending Jews. That's it. It's over. Anyway, here's what's actually unfolding. Hamas reviewing a renewed ceasefire deal as Israel continues bombing Gaza.
Late afternoon in Gaza City, Israeli warnings followed by strikes.
Terrorism designations is incredibly effective as a stopping mechanism in the West. I mean, it honestly worked on me until I started watching you. Yeah.
On residential buildings.
For the record, that's the reason why. That is precisely the fucking reason why there are many, many people in powerful positions that still in a last-ditch effort are trying to fucking deplatform the likes of myself. Okay?
The man who recorded this survived with scratches and bruising. Earlier, an airstrike apparently without warning resulted in more serious injuries. Since yesterday, large parts of Gaza City have been under evacuation order. Israel's defense minister today telling Hamas to accept the terms of a US ceasefire proposal or be destroyed. But civilians, as so often, bearing the cost when the missiles find their targets. And this was northern Jabalia this morning. The attack here came shortly before 1 a.m. while families were sleeping. Homes turned to fragments for children to sift through in search of keepsakes from life before.
People heard news about a ceasefire. Then civilians sleeping in their homes were surprised by random shelling. And here they are, cut in pieces. We have stopped calling on Arab and Muslim countries. We appeal to every free person in this world.
On the day the UN labelled Gaza the hungriest place on the planet, far-right Israeli protesters again tried to block aid lorries on their way in. The draft ceasefire plan would allow for a full resumption of aid using UN agencies, but Hamas has yet to accept it. Their sticking point, the lack of a guarantee that Israel would not resume fighting. Instead, a commitment from President Trump to a permanent resolution if Israel and Hamas reach an agreement through talks.
Yeah, I wonder why. Because Israel's like, yeah, in the first 7 days, you will give us all of the Israeli hostages that remain, and then maybe we won't keep bombing you for the subsequent, 53 additional days. But after that, we are bombing you again. They're openly saying that. So yeah, of course, the responsible party for the well-being of Palestinians is not going to fucking, one, disarm themselves, because that's ridiculous, especially amidst a goddamn genocide. What an insane question. And they're also not going to come to the fucking bargaining table if the one side is saying like, oh, by the way, this ceasefire is bullshit. Like, we're going to keep killing you, and we're going to keep killing all of the children, and there's not really anything you can do about it. Also, give us the hostages back. Who the fuck would be on board with a deal like that? After 19 months of genocide and 19 months of refusal to do any real ceasefire negotiations and violating all those negotiations, like, is it really unjust to demand a permanent ceasefire? How many deaths, how many children need to die? Israel is in desperate need of a tide-changing event at this point to try to recover the insane amount of negative coverage that it's receiving from regular people. And I don't know if there's anything that will actually restore a victimhood narrative to Israel. The embassy shooting did not change it. People very quickly turned back and were like, yeah, well, you're still doing a genocide. We should probably put an end to that. And I don't know if there's anything that could change the tide shift at this point. And the worst part about it is that it's not like people became fucking pro-Hamas all of a sudden or became not Islamophobic all of a sudden, chat. They just realized because of the metric ton of violence, a lot of people were like, oh my God, maybe Israel was just lying this whole fucking time. Or, oh my God, this level of violence is completely fucking unacceptable. That's it. That was the only thing that changed this attitude amongst the broader public.
There are still some quiet spaces in Gaza. Here in her grandparents' home, 5-year-old Wad has been given a new jigsaw. but how to make sense of what has happened to her and her family this week. On Sunday night, silhouetted against flames, she managed to escape an Israeli strike on the school where she was staying. Her mother, her brothers and sisters were all killed. Her father remains in hospital, badly injured.
So far, she's not the Ward we used to know. Hopefully, gradually, step by step, we'll bring her back to who she was. We bring her toys to play with so she can forget a little. We're trying to bring her back to her senses, to her memory, to reduce the anxiety. We're doing all we can to ease the stress she's carrying.
The plan is to surround her with familiar as much engagement and distraction as possible until her father recovers. But in the background, the sound of drones. It's hard to block out the war. The memory that in their last 2 days alive, her mother and siblings didn't eat. Now she says she wants to buy flour so with her father they can make bread and eat together.
What happened to Ward? Do you think surviving fire like that is insignificant? To you or to anyone else? Can't the press speak out, call on the world, on Arabs, Muslims, the EU and Israelis? This girl was pulled from the heart of the fire by God, so you'd wake up and end this war.
In the meantime, Ward's extended family are trying to give her moments of joy in the midst of such profound sorrow, to start rebuilding a young life, even as the destruction all around remorselessly goes on.
Well, joining me now is Nomi Bar Yaakov, a leading international lawyer and peace negotiator who was previously director of the Middle East program at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. I mean, so as a negotiator, what do you think of the way Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy, has gone about this negotiation?
Well, I think not just this negotiation. I think all negotiations he is involved with are tricky. I think you need experts in the actual subject matter to negotiate. And I think that proposal for 60 days is inappropriate at the moment. The war needs to end. Israel needs to withdraw from Gaza, and all 58 hostages need to be returned. So having a kind of deal whereby it's sort of sounds like it may happen, it may not. I'm not sure at all that it's going to happen. But what next? You know, you need to have experts who know that unless the end game is clear in the negotiation, and the end game has to be two states, a Palestinian sovereign state and an Israeli sovereign state, we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, that is clearly not stated anywhere, and the United States is not clear.
It's crazy because, like the experts that they're trying to bring forward are like wishy-washy two-staters at this moment. You can't put the fucking toothpaste back in the goddamn tube, man. It's done. It's over. They need to come at this with the recognition. I think they're trying to. And that's why I'm saying, like, they're going to assume the end game here, even though there is no, like, day after plan for Israel, there is already designs for a day after plan for the propaganda arm of Israel. And that day after plan for the propaganda arm is a two-state approach and liberal Zionism and going back basically to the conditions that created Hamas to begin with. The two-state solution is literally separate but equal. It sounds good to the onlooker if they are not equipped with the knowledge of what the two-state solution creates. A two-state solution, or a pathway towards a two-state solution, is simply a continuation of the one singular state that Israel has illegally occupied on all of the historic Palestinian lands in perpetuity. That's all a two-state solution is. Okay, when people say, oh, we want a two-state solution, the correct terminology to apply in this process is to end the apartheid, to end the occupation. Saying, oh, we just want a two-state solution, it's like, okay, well, that is what the argument was for years and years and years. The one guy who actually entertained that notion or kickstarted that process was assassinated by Israeli society. And supporters of his assassin are now within the governing coalition. Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich. I'm talking about the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. like October 7 happened because October 6 was a two-state solution.
About what the end position is, other than a Trump Riviera, you know,
and that's the problem
in Gaza, and that is a big problem in terms of how you approach whether you should go along with this. I mean, does America feel like an honest broker?
Well, America's never pretended to be impartial. America is Israel's greatest ally, and that is why the Gulf states are taking the lead role in mediation and negotiation. And there is an Arab plan led by Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And that plan is to transfer authority from Hamas in Gaza to a technocratic Palestinian government that will be agreed upon between all the Palestinian factions, and thereafter to rebuild the Gaza Strip without relocating one single Palestinian. That plan is on the table, and that is the only plan that will lead to a sustainable solution, to a sustainable peace ultimately.
I mean, is Hamas's apparent agreement to hand over power, technocratical power, to a new Palestinian administration.
This is real.
Enough.
For the record, this is being presented by Saudi Arabia and them, but like this quite literally is something that Hamas has said yes to. Chatters, understand that much has been made of the selfish and evil nature of Hamas in Western media. Much has been made about the selfish and evil nature of Hamas in Western media. But and that's part of the reason why, in order to continue this narrative that these guys are like all selfish and they just want to dominate the Palestinian the Palestinian existence in the Gaza Strip, they refuse to actually cover a lot of the negotiations from the Hamas perspective. And Hamas has said that they will dissolve and that they will completely step aside. They will not disarm. No one, like Palestinians, will not disarm. But Hamas is willing to dissolve its political movement in its entirety, and step aside for a technocratic Palestinian controlling entity in the region. If people were truly motivated by death and destruction and like simple dominance, why the fuck wouldn't they just become the Palestinian Authority, chatters? Palestinian Authority is a perfect example of collaborating with the Israeli government and getting a lot of clout and a lot of money and freedom to travel. If the if Hamas wanted simply just to dominate the Palestinian lives without actually trying to move in the direction of emancipation, they would have just basically become the Palestinian Authority. It is precisely the opposite. And that's, oh, these guys are so selfish and so brutal and so barbaric and anti-Semitic. It's fucking bullshit.
When Israel is saying it wants to destroy Hamas, that's where it's not clear, isn't it? You know, does Hamas need to offer to leave?
Well, what does
what does
destroying Hamas mean, Christian? How do you destroy a movement? It's an ideology, and who will replace Hamas? You could get somebody far, far, far more radical. You know, it's possible. You're not going to replace one movement with a peace-loving movement with this kind of approach. The approach needs to be holistic, and it needs to look at the immediate needs, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza is beyond catastrophic, so that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. And then you need to build upon it, and Hamas leaders need to be given some sort of possibility to leave the Strip and hand over if we're going to get anywhere. But it's very clear they're not going to leave. They're not in control of most of the Strip at the moment. And the problem is that you're getting gangs controlling different streets. You're getting different factions, different families.
This is true.
And it's totally...
This is true. She's actually not wrong about this aspect of it. And this is Israel's design. Israel is going to the fucking criminal elements within the Gaza Strip and saying, we'll work with you. We'll give you pieces of the land. As long as you fuck shit up, as long as you steal aid, sometimes Israel gives them a military base to operate out of in a red zone. There is an IDF, Israeli Occupying Force military base, that some of these gangs literally operate off of. They give them arms. They give them gear. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. It's ISIS affiliates that Israel is working with within the Gaza Strip. Think about that.
Chaos, and it's going to be more and more chaotic unless this is sorted out promptly.
Hamas has suggested that while it decides how to respond. It is consulting other Palestinian factions.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Who are the Palestinian factions?
Well, no, there are many factions in Gaza and in the West Bank. They signed an agreement earlier on in the year in Beijing. I think there were 18 factions. And we're not, so it's not just Hamas and Fatah. It's not just, Hamas is in control of Gaza and Fatah in the West Bank. And there's also, I think the Palestinian population would like to see elections in Palestine, in all of Palestine. So that's Gaza and the West Bank. But there are lots of groups. I mean, I can name them if you like, but, the big ones are Fatah, of course, and the PFLP and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They're the ones that are the known ones. But there are plenty of other splinter groups that are holding hostages, for example. And
yeah, there's tribal formations as well still, like big families. Not as a doubt to your point, but can you point towards some sources validating that Israel's working with some armed gangs? Yes, I covered it every single day for the past week, I would say. I think there's a YouTube video out there that you can watch where the video also has what do you call it? The video will feature evidence. But yeah, Hamas actually today shot and killed some of these guys. I can't show you the fucking full thing. Criminal gangs looting aid in Gaza. Hamas released footage today of an ambush against what they thought were Israeli Mistarvim undercover soldiers in Rafah. But upon closer inspection, they turned out to be the Abu Shabab's gang, the Israel-backed warlord, drug dealer, and serial criminal responsible for the looting of the vast majority of the aid under IDF protection. Abu Shabab runs a gang of 100 to 200 armed mercenaries who set up a military complex in Rafah with Israel's backing. In the footage, Abu Shabab's mercenaries were walking around the depopulated Rafah, freely carrying weapons in front of Israeli troops. Currently, any Palestinian that walks into Rafah is killed on the spot. Okay? Israel protects these guys with drones. The Guardian has written about it. Haaretz has written about it. Numerous outlets at this point have written about it since November of last year. Okay? Israel is now open about their collaboration with these guys. Israel previously was covertly funding and facilitating sending arms to these guys. Now they openly fucking say it. The mercenaries were conducting surveillance activities for Israel in those areas,
which is supposed to be under Israeli control. The UN's Sam Rose described a looted...
This lady is like kind of cooking too. She's been cooking up big steaks every day.
Valley in the south between Kerem Shalom and Khan Yunis, where they say trucks would frequently be attacked. A photo posted last week showed a Palestinian man in military gear carrying an AK-47 with UN cars visible in the background. It's more than 3 kilometers inside an IDF-declared combat zone. Came from the Facebook page of this man, Yasser Abu Shabab, who multiple aid officials have named as a gang ringleader, though he denies his men were involved in the looting. The new US-backed aid system has said its continued distribution on Wednesday, claiming delivery of 800,000 meals. This was the scene on Tuesday as people were unpacking the box.
The Abu Shabab clan has disowned their son. Statement from Yasser Abu Shabab's family completely disowning him for his collaboration in gangs. Statement from the Abu Shabab family in Gaza regarding our son Yasser Abu Shabab and his security group operating in Gaza. One of the biggest problems with this, when people go, oh, do you have more evidence on this? Do you have more evidence on this? Is that a lot of the stuff is coming from either outlets that you don't consider to be fucking valid, or when it's Sky News covering it, okay, they barely touch on it. So you have to tie it all together. You have to tie it all.
Gang ringleader, though he denies his men were involved in the looting. The new US-backed aid system has said its continued distribution on Wednesday, claiming delivery of 800,000 meals. This was the scene.
Like, there's a Guardian article that I read on stream a while back. There is a Haaretz article that details what these guys are doing in collaboration with the Israeli government. But there hasn't been deep dive investigative reporting from like the New York Times or the BBC, and I'm not holding my breath for that. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Let's be real, given their fucking position as major dick riders for Israel.
The president mentioned that you had to deal with all the slings and arrows during your time at Doge. There's this
media organizations in this room with the.
Yeah, Washington Post I think covered it as well here. Gangs looting Gaza aid operate in areas under Israeli control, aid groups say. UN memo obtained by the Post concluded that gangs may be benefiting from a passive, if not active, benevolence or protection from the Israeli military. I hope this is good enough for the chatters who were looking for evidence. When you say ISIS affiliated, do you use that as an umbrella term to say Islam fundamentalist? No, because there's fucking fundamentalists within Hamas as well. No, ISIS affiliated means ISIS affiliated. Affiliations to the Islamic State. There are obviously ISIS affiliated groups that have operated inside of the Gaza Strip far before October 7. They are, according to at least people with a lot more knowledge than myself, people who are from Gaza, people who are Palestinian, a lot of those ISIS affiliates actually operate within the Gaza Strip because Israel allows them to, because Israel sees them as a beneficial group that can be used at times as a destabilizing force, or at other times, potentially like this one, a force that you can use to dominate the region. Ironically enough, Israel kept saying Hamas is ISIS in the aftermath of October 7, but Israel has always collaborated with ISIS, both in Syria and also in the Gaza Strip. It's not the Shabab guy that I'm talking about. It's not Abu Shabab. There is another one. His name is Al-Shoni. I think it's Al-Shoni. He is the ISIS affiliate. Abu Shabab is the drug dealer. The other guy is the ISIS affiliate whose father was a direct collaborator with Israel. Anyway, Abu Shabab has also ties to ISIS in Egypt. Yeah, I think that's also true. In the Sinai, which is where he gets his drugs from, through a tunnel system underneath drugs that he sells within the Gaza Strip. Anyway, Musk, I will continue to visit the White House. Oh, wait, let me finish this. What am I doing? Here, let's finish the Hamas reviewing ceasefire deal, and then we'll get back to the drama.
It's not that there are around 18 groups officially and many more if you want to look at it unofficially. And what the danger is, we are going to move towards a totally chaotic situation where there is no control whatsoever unless there is an orderly transfer, which has to be part of the ceasefire moves forward.
Nomi Bar-Yaakov, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me now is Hussam Zomlot, head of the Palestinian mission to the UK, who was born in Gaza. Ambassador, thank you for joining us. Does the Palestinian Authority want Hamas to take this deal?
Well, what the state of Palestine and the government of the state of Palestine and the Palestinian people want is to end this genocide. We do not expect a pause of genocide. This is unheard of. Genocide must be stopped immediately. And we know how to do that. We need to exert maximum pressure, not just give lip service. The international community has a responsibility to undertake to stop this 21st century live stream genocide.
So a temporary ceasefire doesn't do it?
There is no war in Gaza. War happens between two armies, my friend. There is no war in Gaza. And for the last 600 days, the world has seen that this is a campaign of mass murder, mass destruction,
It's really interesting that even now people still try to go, well, it's a war. Like, do you have no interest in thinking a little bit outside of the world that you've designed for yourself? Like, next week at this point, that kind of statement is going to be seen as genocide denial. Like, while you're at the fucking edge, now is the time to stop with this, like, oh, it's just a war shit. Okay? Because the dam has broken and the waters are raging down the fucking, down the mountainside. And you're just sitting in the village going, nope, it's fine. Just a little bit of rain. It's crazy. I don't understand how you can still say this shit this close out from a complete attitude shift. It was never a war, chatters. It was always an exterminationist ethnic cleansing campaign. Make no mistake. I'm simply talking about how people are still refusing to adopt the proper framework. I'm simply talking about people and their overall refusal to say the truth. As clearly now, it's pretty obvious that most people are no longer entertaining this like war narrative. Greek doctor Christos Georgalos on a stint in Gaza. I can't say I went to war. War is a very different thing. There was no war in Treblinka. There was no war in Auschwitz. War has two armies. Here you have a population that's mainly civilians and women and children who have no way of escaping, and bombs are systematically raining down from the sky. They hit hospitals. They hit journalists. Rubio announced that they won't grant visas to people who criticize Israel. Fuck America. America can suck my dick. America can eat my dick, okay? It's okay. Yeah, all right. Don't grant visas to fucking normal people. Continue going down this idiotic, self-defeating spiral. You mentioned the creation of a permission structure that allows the shift in media coverage. What changed exactly? The dam. The pressure valve had to be released one way or another. Overwhelming majorities in every fucking Western nation were freaking out over lack of movement from our leadership. So either you would just tell them democracy is not real, shut the fuck up, and we're just going to am Israel high our way out of this, and you have nothing to say, which would have invited even more of a militant reaction against that sort of thing. Because when democracy falls apart, when people have to reckon with the reality that our democratic elected representatives are actually not interested in representing us at all of a sudden there's opportunity for revolt. And what's interesting about this is that for Western leadership, especially in like Europe, where they're a little bit more sensitive about their image as the inventors of liberal capitalist democracy, they had a tough choice. Either start criticizing Israel a little bit officially through the official organs of the government, or show their public that they have no interest in the democratic process at all, that they are not responsive to the needs and demands of their citizenry. So they chose the lightest form of criticism they could possibly engage in, but that created a permission structure within the media to actively criticize Israel. That's why people like Piers Morgan came out and were like, it's a genocide. I've had it. I'm telling you, that's what it is. This is what protesters have been saying for over a year now. The West free pass for Israel to commit ability. If we abandon Gaza, if we consider there's a free pass for Israel, even if we do condemn the terrorist attacks, we will kill our credibility, Macron tells a top defense forum in Singapore, adding, and this is why we do reject the double standard. I told you. How long? How long have I been saying this? It's not just about saying America bad, it's proving why America is bad. And the American allegiance and Western world's allegiance with Israel has shown every single person that has been paying attention to what's going on and what the reaction is from the American government and from their own governments. It's caused people to recognize that, one, the international rule-based order has been a lie, something that we all knew, by the way. And two, that your representatives, your elected representatives, do not care about any sort of humanity, any sort of decency, any of the values that they claim to care about, that they claim to defend. Thomas Massey says, nothing can justify the number of civilian casualties, tens of thousands of women and children inflicted by Israel and Gaza in the last 2 years. We should end all U.S. military aid to Israel now. For those of you who don't know, Thomas Massey has always been a number one fuck Israel guy in Congress. This is not new. Oh, this guy's very funny. Let's see what he had to say. He's Irish, chat.
Janice McU-turn here, writer. Guys, I think we can all agree the images coming out of Gaza this week, they've ripped my heart out and flung it against a wall. It's unacceptable, and I now, through enormous personal courage, actually, I'm ready to use that blasted G word. It's genocide, guys. I'm ready to tell you that it's genocide, guys. And I can no longer stay silent. That's what it is. I can no longer stay silent. Now, I was kind of delighted to stay silent for the last 19 months, as many within my industry were paying the ultimate price for sticking their head above the parapet and just calling it what any sentient being would have to concede is a live stream genocide. Mostly people of colour, by the way. But sure, that was great for me, less competition. But I do feel now's the moment for me to come in. I mean, if you come in too early, you could be labelled an Islamist. Whatever, too late, you're a Holocaust denier. I feel by coming in now, I've given myself the best chance of being commercially viable to both sides in a post-genocide world. Look, as a writer, I think we can all agree that's where all the great literature comes from, doesn't it? Just sitting on the fence, seeing which way the wind will blow, and then going in the direction most expedient to one's career. Now, if the wind blows the other way again, I just want to put on record one more time, October 7th. absolutely condemn it in the strongest possible terms, like sick. But yeah, just praying for peace, guys. Namaste.
This guy's awesome. He's been doing this. He's been doing this bit for a minute. Not just like about people who are coming out and finally have something to say, but just in general. He's very pro-Palestine. Wait, what? Preparing to leave the country, David Pacman. Did you watch his vlog? He's not leaving the States, but he's looking at his options since he's a naturalized citizen and not native born, and being anti-Trump makes him a target. Listen, David Pacman is a big liberal resistance guy. Okay? He's also a naturalized citizen from Argentina, but he was naturalized like 15 years ago. I have many family members who were naturalized recently, much more recently than David Pacman. I will say this much. Considering that the number one vehicle that people are using to attack political dissidents in this country is their position on Israel, you know, David Pacman is probably going to be safe. I still think I'm going to be safe. This does not mean that David Pacman is not in the crosshairs of this administration. I wouldn't say that. I'm sure he is. I just think that he is lower on the priority list. Hasan, you aren't safe? Yeah, I know I'm not safe. He's very low. By the time they target someone like him, every lib is in a camp already. Bad Empanada suggested Hasan leave the country. Does that make Bad Empanada a coward? I mean, I'm not leaving because I'm a stubborn fucking piece of shit. But I think Bad Empanada, if someone were to ask Bad Empanada, do you think David Pacman should leave the country? He would laugh at that. I think there is a major difference between someone like myself and someone like David Pacman. And that major difference is our position on Israel, which is diametrically opposite to one another. And therefore, I am seen as a legitimate threat to the administration. David Pacman is not. I don't think. At least for now. For now. That doesn't mean that the administration won't come after the likes of David Pacman. I'm certain once they move on from the, these guys are pro-Palestine terrorists, they will eventually cast a wider net. Former H3 guys, musician, comedian Reggie Watts' response to Thom Yorke's statement. The actual fucking post from Reggie Watts. I shouldn't have clicked on this. God, you guys have to see everything from the lens of drama. Oh my God, I am so stupid. I should have never clicked that fucking link. Hey, if in the future you see a link like that, you don't have to cover it from the perspective of Ethan Klein, okay? You can just simply send me fucking Reggie Watts' Instagram to be like, this is what Reggie Watts had to say about Thom Yorke, because that's the meat of the story. Not everything has to tie back to Ethan fucking Klein. Please, please, please. Thoughts on Thom Yorke's recent statement. I was disappointed to see that Thom's statement centers his hurt feelings and frames his fans' demands for him to speak up as a social media witch hunt instead of recognizing the urgency of their call for him to speak out against the world historical humanitarian crisis in Palestine. I hope Thom will reflect and decenter himself in the public outcry against the genocide, because if he and his artistic legacy stand for love and humanity as he asserts, he can come to see his fans' actions as an act of love, loving solidarity with our suffering people, a needed affirmation of our humanity in these dark times. I also want to address Thom's repetition of a common rhetorical tactic of those who are devoted to maintaining the status quo. Dude, oh my God, he cooked. Oh my God, my goat. My goat. Reggie is the man. That's right. I'm hitting him up with a follow. There are chatters who are outright proud of and love being in the snark subs every day and post anything they see there every day. Yeah, look, as long as it's relevant to Israel, Palestine, that's fine. Okay? Like, there are things that Ethan does that I think are utterly unconscionable, like fundraising for the Atlantic Council under the auspices of fundraising for Palestinians. That is utterly unconscionable, and I will cover that, okay? But if it's like, oh my God, look at what Reggie Watts had to say about Thom Yorke, that's a standalone position. You don't have to fucking massage Ethan Klein into this. You know what I mean? Who the fuck cares about Ethan Klein in this situation? What? My favorite segment on Piers Morgan is when people came after Hasan, bullying him to condom hummus, and he started crying, saying you didn't have to bully me into saying it. What? God died when we tested the first nuclear warhead. Oh, you're fucking memeing. Like, making a joke about Thom Yorke. Anyway, Own the Drama Frogs by launching Elden Ring. Shut the fuck up. All right, let's keep going. I also want to address Thom's repetition of a common rhetorical tactic of those who are devoted to maintaining the status quo. that one cannot speak up or demand an end to the genocide unless they fully understand the deep complexity of this historical conflict. I urge Thom's fans to reject this conviction, neutralizing, demobilizing sentiment, and trust their hearts. You don't need to be a geopolitics scholar to know that starving children and slaughtering families is wrong. Your membership in the human family gives you an authority and indeed responsibility to speak up. That's right. He's fucking so right. Wow, what a beautiful words, man. Holy shit. Karma police will come after Thom. No, it won't, because the reality of the matter is there is no justice, okay? There is no karmic justice or any real justice on this planet. I'm sorry to report. After all of these years of hoping, Dick Cheney is still very much alive. Benjamin Netanyahu is very much alive. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is very much alive. Vladimir Putin is very much alive. George W. Bush is very much alive and kicking, okay? You know it's a song, right? Yeah, of course, dude. Radiohead is the last time I listened to fucking music. I know. Yeah, I know. Don't make me start singing. I already did one song. I already did one Radiohead song earlier today talking about how Thom Yorke is a creep. How do you keep going? How do you keep doing this? Because I'm a freak, dude. I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What am I doing here? I don't belong here. Radiohead was so anti-war. No, they just love... Dude, Radiohead is like the classic progressive except for Palestine. Okay, that's it. Oh my God, you sing worse than you dance. I'm becoming a hater. Okay, calm down. I'm not a musician. I'm not a dancer. I'm trying my fucking best to entertain you, okay? This is my 9/11 as a white guy who's almost 40. Yeah, they love Israel. It saved their first album from tanking, except it's like shocking because Israel famously only likes dog shit music, and Radiohead, they have dog shit politics, but they don't have dog shit music. Or maybe because Israel fucking loves Radiohead, it's making me second guess my loyalty to their music or my assessment of their music initially. Like maybe they were dog shit all along.
Starvation of an entire people. This must stop unconditionally. I mean, this is not subject.
But that's not on offer, is it, right now?
It must be on offer. You asked me what is our position. Yeah. We need this to stop, the genocide to end and stop permanently, not a pause for 60 days. We need to make sure that aid and food and all the basic needs are delivered unhindered immediately via the international community and the UN, not via any other mechanisms. And we need to make sure that the Gaza is rebuilt in the shortest span. There is a plan on the table. There is an Arab summit that has adopted the plan. We know what to do. We know how to link Gaza with the West Bank under one political system. And we know how to make sure that the Netanyahu plan of mass transfer is faced by all of us, is challenged by all of us. And I've just seen your report that about the groups who blocked the aid, calling them extreme. I'm hearing lots of the conversations as if Netanyahu is the problem. Netanyahu is the product of an Israeli society, by and large, that have shifted to the right. And now, collectively, as an international community, we need to think what to do, what actions to be.
We've also reported this week about opposition within Israel to what's going on.
Good, and it's growing. But we need to help this opposition by making sure that the right actions are taken. Full arms embargo now. We are hearing lots from London, from Paris, about possible action. We need it now. People are dying by the hundreds.
Well, do you think things are shifting in Europe? I mean, we're hearing a slight increase in the language.
Discourse, yes. Rhetoric, yes. But the actions that have been taken so far are by far not enough to stop a genocide that are transmitted to our screens every day. It's not talks of trade that needs to be suspended. It is trade altogether that must be suspended. The UK and the US and other Western powers are still sending weapons to a country that is committing genocide and now standing trial at the ICJ. That's the highest world court for the crime of genocide. There are sanctions that need to be imposed not on individual settlers or some organizations, but on the entire ecosystem of the settlement enterprise and the state that sponsors them. There is a list of things, including the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine. I still hear some Western politicians, including UK ministers, who still saying this risks, listen to this, even the foreign secretary yesterday in an interview, what Israel is doing in Gaza risks violating international law. Seriously? Seriously, we are still using this language and we are still giving lip service? It is the responsibility of contracting parties of international system to take immediate, tangible steps to stop this genocide.
And when every Israeli minister or ambassador says this could stop tomorrow, hand over the hostages, do you believe that?
If Netanyahu and Israel really wanted the hostages, they would have been home by now. There was an agreement.
Yep. Cooking, as always.
A U.S. proposed...
Oh, you didn't read my whole comment? Radiohead was anti-war during the time Bush was president, wrote a whole album about called Hail to the Thief, so it's frustrating they're not anti-war when it comes to Palestine. Hypocrites for sure. No, even during the time that Bush was president, they were, as far as I understand, still fucking pro-Israel. That's why I skipped over the rest of your statements. Listen, there's a term for this. For a lot of post-October 7 leftists who only recently started recognizing what Israel was doing, the term for it in progressive circles has always been progressive except for Palestine. There's a term for it, okay? There are a lot of people who are PEPs, okay? Progressive except Palestine. That's it. Like people who are some of the wokest motherfuckers you've ever seen, okay? Radlibs. Like people who genuinely are socialist, okay? Genuinely. Like I'm not even kidding. People like Bernie fucking Sanders, okay? Bernie goddamn Sanders, who is like in American Congress, made statements that are anti-imperialist. Okay? Yeah, Mark Lamont Hill wrote a fucking book about it, dude. Except for Palestine, the limits of progressive politics. This is the book. It's crazy because, no, it's not even Islamophobia. We're talking about people who are like anti-Iraq war. Okay? People who are otherwise like anti-fucking Iraq war, for example. But then when Israel comes into the fucking fold, they just don't categorize it in the same ways. They can't comprehend it. They cannot comprehend it. Zionism is so pervasive and has gotten zero resistance for decades. That's a big part of it. Now that's changing. I do not think that any new wave of progressivism will factor in even liberal Zionism into the equation. It's over. I think anyone going forward in this upcoming generation that considers themselves to be progressive, that considers themselves to be leftist, I don't think they will ever allow any kind of Zionist sentiment, to take place, to take root inside of progressive causes. Okay? You're talking about not Mark Lamont Hill, right? You're talking about the PA affiliate guy. Yeah, I know. This guy is who you're talking about. Lamont Hill saying like his family has gotten super wealthy. Yeah, no, I know.
Held by Hamas.
Ceasefire in January that would have seen all hostages home by now. And we always said there are hostages in the Israeli...
But that leaves Hamas in place, doesn't it?
There are thousands of Palestinian hostages taken by the Israeli oppressive regime. There are 3,600 Palestinians now in Israeli jail that are held without trial, without charge. They are hostages.
Do you agree with our previous
So yes, we need to
who says, you know, Hamas need to be given a way to leave?
Hamas leaders have also gotten super wealthy. Yeah, I think that's a fucking lie, chatter. I know people say that all the time, but I've seen zero concrete evidence to the fucking unimaginable wealth that Hamas leaders have gotten, especially because the numbers that people use to point to the wealth that the Hamas leadership has like accrued is literally larger than like the total number of aid that Palestine receives. Like it's like double the number of like all of the aid that Palestine receives. You know what I mean? The leader they spoke about earlier is one of the articles is a billionaire. Yeah, I know. Articles claim that. Okay. I have yet to see any conclusive evidence. I'll give you one example. Okay. People said Yahya Sinwar was a billionaire. He literally died inside of Gaza starving. Okay. He hadn't had food except for like a pack of Mentos in his fucking pocket for the past 2 or 3 days. when the Israeli state assassinated him. Okay? Yeah, people say I'm a fucking billionaire. I'm sure there are wealthy members of the Hamas leadership that are landowners, and a part of that mechanism is to in their calculation, a part of that is to overcome some of these like financial restrictions that you get or whatever. But I think that too much emphasis is placed on how much wealth Hamas leadership has, and I think a lot of that is just fucking bullshit. It's the same thing that Israel said about Hamas leadership being in fucking Doha in secret, or being in underground caves strapped with Israeli babies to their chests so Israel won't fucking kill them, as though the Israeli state wouldn't assassinate a Hamas leadership. And no, there is a difference between the leadership in the West Bank being rich, who are actually rich, and there is actually material wealth to show for it. There's a meme, there are some families in the West Bank that have unimaginable wealth. Families that live in the West Bank in like fucking chateaus, basically, like Palestinians. There are definitely very wealthy West Bank Palestinians. Many of them collaborate in some ways with the Israeli administrators. That's why I'm pushing back. You're right. Ultimately, it bears no, it's not a part of this conversation at all, whether Hamas is owned and operated, or Hamas is operated by like wealthy billionaires who have stolen from the Palestinian population. Doesn't change the dynamics of genocide even a little bit. And you're not wrong. But having said that, this has always been like a Israeli technique to constantly talk about how like, well, how can there be a genocide? Hamas is actually a selfish movement to steal from the Palestinians. When in fact, many of the wealthy families in historic Palestine that still maintain some of their wealth are there, usually in the West Bank, and collaborate with the Israeli government.
You know, is the logical conclusion of Hamas handing over power that they are no longer there in Gaza, that they are somewhere else?
No, Hamas is not rich as hell. Shut the fuck up.
What needs to leave?
Or can they stay? Because if they stay, then won't they have influence?
We have agreed, it's a consensus, that no political faction in Palestine will have any role in governance. Fatah, Hamas, anybody.
What will they be doing?
Whatever they will be doing, Gaza and the West Bank will be under one united government. That government will be answered to the legitimate representation of Palestine.
The unity of the commanders,
the unity of the
Palestinians, stay in Gaza and not wield power.
What needs to leave is the Israeli occupation. It is the soldiers. It is the boots. It is all this military might that is committing mass slaughter as we speak now in Palestine. And this is not just the story of the last 600 days.
But just answer that question.
The last 600 days have been very well reported.
That those people who are military commanders and political leaders can stay in a very small place and not wield effective influence and power.
Well, Israel claims every single day that they have killed 30,000. And their estimates of Hamas military and members.
The interviewer is so funny because he's like, Channel 4 is one of the most critical resources in the Western press on Israel and has been consistently. And now that the fucking tide is shifting, they're getting outflanked by Piers Morgan, which is shocking to me. It's like, bro, you guys were at the cutting edge, okay, of real commentary on this issue. Sure, there were a lot of fucking setbacks in the process. But it's crazy. It's crazy that he's like, well, do you condemn Hamas? Like, it's so weird. I would have expected them by this point to start talking about how like this constant attention placed on Hamas and its militancy is actually counterproductive and a way to deflect the attention away from Israel's violence, which everyone can fucking see in broad daylight. But nope, turns out these guys were just there. They were honestly always at this position, not a little bit to the left and not a little bit more to the right. They were always firmly committed to this like both sides position, I guess, but in a way where like they were still critical of Israel, more critical of Israel than like the BBC, of course.
So, but their estimates before, that was the total number of Hamas. What Israel has been doing, and we have warned you, remember, and the world from the beginning, they are targeting the Palestinian people. We want that to stop. This isn't about Hamas. This has been the case for 77 years. An Israeli relentless campaign to ethnically cleanse Palestine of its inhabitants, to replace the Palestinian people. And you're talking about the West Bank. See what is happening in the West. I'm sorry, you're talking about Gaza. See what is happening in the West Bank. See what Ben Gvir did in Jerusalem, in Al-Aqsa Mosque only a few hours ago. You will know that this isn't about Gaza only. This isn't about Hamas only. This is about an ideology that is 77 years old, that seeks one thing. It seeks the annihilation, extermination, replacement of the Palestinian people. And that's why I started by saying we need not to focus only on